And also, is there a certain drug that seems to be prevalent?
A certain drug right now that we're dealing with that is a huge problem is heroin.
Okay.
We've seen a huge increase in heroin use at a very young age.
Does it seem to be like either so far this year, because it's this year you've had your bad spike, does it seem to be people moving in or people who have been here for most of their lives, or is it homeless, or?
Both. Well,
Drugs
local
are a
people don't
societal
come out.
problem.
And are they coming in from Detroit or Chicago?
Detroit usually, or we see.
Or the
So
prescription
heroin is
drugs.
a big issue that we deal with. Crack cocaine is another big one that we deal with. And in regards to what to look for, tattoos or dress, we look for behavioral patterns, not the appearance of an individual. That's not appropriate. We look for behavioral patterns, and what are they doing from a behavioral standpoint? Classic example that we use is a drug house. It's pretty easy to identify a drug house because you see people coming and going, short trips, short stays, 1 or 2 minutes, multiple people coming, and there's a peak. You sell all their product, and it's quiet for a while, and there's a peak because they get new product. That's an example of a behavioral pattern. So that's what we ask people to look for. Guns, big issue, behavioral pattern that we see there is people stick guns in their waistbands. So if you pay attention to people, in law enforcement, we're trained to look at their hands because it's not their facial expressions that are going to get you, it's their hands that are going to get you. So if you encounter an officer and he's looking at your midsection of your hands, don't think he's being rude. He's paying attention to what we train him to pay attention to. If you see people carrying concealed weapons, you'll see it poke out of the back of their shirt.
Just don't go
You
to
see them
that house.
constantly adjusting their pants. Those are behavioral patterns that you're looking for.
Just to follow up, would you say that right now the JPD sort of has their finger on the pulse of where the problem is?
Well, I'd like to say that, but the minute I say that, then something else is going to come up. So, I will say that the Detective Girl, Detective Garcia, Stiles, Gary Schutte, Kevin Hiller, Lieutenant Hitt, Lieutenant Simpson do a very good job of staying on top of who's doing what and exchanging information with local law enforcement. I'm always amazed when something happens, they will mention 2 or 3 people's names and say, we need to be looking at those individuals. And unfortunately, again, it's 10% causing 90% of the problems, and so it gets pretty easy to start to see the same names appear, which is unfortunate. It's unfortunate.
Are you
Yes,
doing
ma'am.
a lot of arrests for people selling marijuana, or is that kind of pushed under the rug now?
Yeah, that's kind of gone down the list of our priorities because of the reduction in staff and because of the other crimes that are occurring. It's not to say they don't, but that's kind of, and especially with the issue with heroin that we're dealing with. Yes, ma'am.
Is it true that 2 of the armed robberies were held against caregivers in our community?
I don't know the specifics on the case you're talking about. So even if I did, this wouldn't be the appropriate venue to discuss specifics on the case. Yes, ma'am.
If the substations isn't an idea that you would entertain at this point, could you possibly bring back what was successful with the police officers living in the neighborhood and maybe use all these houses that are foreclosed that the city's knocking down right now, and maybe reuse them in an intelligent way like that?
Yeah,
It
one-
seems like people like that.
One of the problems I have with that is you're going to put an officer in a house that I wouldn't live in. And I'm not going to do that to my employees.
But my house was condemned and I'm living in it, so I don't
That's-
know why
that's-
they couldn't.
That's a financial decision that would have to be made from council because you're talking about investing a substantial amount in a house that may not be the best return on your investment. But it gets back to the question you had about the residential officer program. It's a valuable
Give it to
program.
him for free.
Absolutely.
It's a foreclosed house.
How is the policy made? Who decides whether the officers have to live within X amount?
The 20 miles, it's a state law.
So it'd be at the state level that they would have to
Yes.
say that, okay, you have to live actually within
Yeah,
city
right.
limits.
If we instituted a resident officer program, we would have to get the buy-in from the officers to say, I agree,
Volunteer.
I'll volunteer to live in the house, because we can't make them do that.
Is there any way to incentivize
Yes.
officers?
Well,
Free.
staying in a house for free is a pretty big incentive. And
Yeah.
that's the way the program was set up. They were city-owned homes. It was free rent. They didn't have to pay. But there is a burnout factor because when they moved into those houses, now all of a sudden people were knocking on their door morning, noon, and night. And one of the things that we didn't think about was, well, they work their shift and then they're done. It didn't happen that way. They were getting knocks on the door in the middle of the night, and we started encountering burnout factors. And people said, man, this is crazy. I mean, I had my family. I wanted some personal time, and they're not getting it. So that was an issue that just was new to us.
But
They
one
can
thing
afford
that I could say that I
vacations.
think we could help with, because me and several of our associates are pretty good at applying political pressure. If you have a specific need and it's not being met by either state or federal government, we can help there as citizens, because we will put pressure on them.
I'm going to turn that over to the politicians. I'm staying out of that one.
We would love to put pressure on making people live in the city. I would love.
Well, it's not so much that, it's just the, y'all are doing an amazing job with just a few people. You have a 30% reduction in staff cost, and crimes are prevalent, and, you're doing a good job, and I can say that from our perspective, that the Jackson Police Department's very reasoned, and they don't create laws, they enforce laws. We haven't had a problem in our community, and we greatly appreciate that.
We're concerned about personal property tax being taken away, because we're not sure if we're gonna get the proper, funding replacement for that. We're concerned about revenue sharing, that's down quite a bit, that's what we,
Yeah,
that's all
but
general.
as citizens, if we can assist the city council by going to, hammering the state or hammering the federal government through making phone calls, sending emails, we'll be happy to do that. We bring a lot of force when we attack something.
It's your tax dollars. I'm sorry. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, I'm Arlene Robinson, President of the Jackson County branch of the NAACP. I really appreciate what we're doing here tonight, but I did have one question. In the recent activities that we've had with the gun violence that's horrible that's going on now, are you planning to be more visible in those areas? I mean, I live in First Ward, so it's something that's near and dear to me because we had a recent incident there, and I think it was 2 weeks in a row.
Yes.
So I don't know if they're related at all, but tend to feel that they might have been, because the week before they had one shooting, and then the next week we had the shootout or whatever that was in the neighborhood. So do you plan on being more visible in that area, just because we don't know if that's the end of it, or, and I mean, I know the police department would know when it's the end if you have someone, but,
That is our intent. And I think Mr. Robinson running for council, so she's a lot to that is our intent, is to be more visible, and that's one of the reasons we're going to put people out in overtime capacity. We've instructed the officers working in that area, if you're not busy, you need to be visible down there, drive around on foot, what have you. I think they were down there the other day because there was a crowd gathering and it looked like they were going to fight. So we sent 3 or 4 cars down there to be visible and kind of simple the problem on the way. I don't think it resolved the underlying issue, but at least it worked along. So that is our intent. The reason to bring in the state police is so they're visible, the other agencies, and so you have a uniform presence. That helps, but on the flip side of that, not necessarily addressing your problem as much as moving it along. And so we really want to get to the bottom of the issue and try to resolve it. Are we successful? Sometimes we are, sometimes we're not.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Today on the news, they talked about Michigan had I believe, $850 million increase from revenue they didn't expect. Is Jackson going to get any of that?
That's a good question for council.
We're working through the Michigan Municipal League, who's our lobbyist firm, and the Michigan Municipal League will, put pressure on the legislature to try to deviate some of those funds to local governments, which we hope that will happen because everybody wants a piece of the pie, and so we want to get ours too. So I
It
would hope
sounds
that
like
they
you
would
need
return.
it, not just want it.
Yeah, it's easy to cut the upper guys, it's easy to cut the lower guys, so that's what the state's been doing for us. Federal government's doing a little bit for the state, and it kind of rolls downhill, so. But yeah, we'll definitely work with our MML partners that represent us in Lansing to put pressure on them. They were up there today fighting for some stuff for city and villages and municipal government, lobbying for them too, so.
Well, I think it's an extreme problem when you give somebody a job, like going out and fighting someone who's violent, and then they're underfunded. Now, I don't think that's justice for a department, and I think citizens should be upset about that, and they should do something about it, because, if the police do, this is the most valuable thing government provides for the safety of citizens.
Police and fire, that's the base of our civilization, is protecting us and taking care of us. And our officers and our firemen should not feel like they are overextended.
I agree with it.
That's
And we've done a very good job trying to give them the
I know,
resources.
I'm not bashing you, I'm
And
saying,
Matt and his staff has been great at unturning the rug and finding these Bain Justice grants.
Oh, the bird grants.
Burn grants. I mean, there's a lot of grants out there that we're always approving a grant for something. And a lot of it's for the technology, upgrading radios, getting the computers in the car, buying new cars, those type of things that help them get the tools that they need to do the job. Think about you some new guns too.
Yeah, we're working on that. Yeah. I'm gonna stop talking because I don't want to hog the show. I'm gonna let Elmer come up and talk for a few minutes. But I appreciate your time. Again, give our email. If you have any questions, an email. You can stop. If you want to talk, you're more than welcome to stop down. I encourage you to call first. My schedule's kind of busy, bouncing back and forth from police and fire and all the other things. But love to hear from you. That's what we're here for.
Give our officers a pat on the back.
I will. They do an amazing job. I'm very appreciative of what they do every day.
Tell them the citizens
astounded.
appreciate everything they're doing and understand the pressure they're under.
Thank you. And thank you. Lieutenant Elmer Head, he's in charge of our patrol division, so Elmer does a wonderful job, and we'll let him talk now. Not quite as long-winded as he is. So. 4 things I want to talk about, and I'm going to name them, help me remember. Customer service, Crime Stoppers, break-ins, and guns. Everybody got those 4?
Yep.
What was the first one? Customer service. Customer service, yeah. Despite the cutbacks, budgets, loss of officers, Chief didn't touch on a lot of it. I mean, right now we have patrol. That's the backbone of the department, is our patrol division. We have a detective bureau. We've lost our neighborhood officers, our resident officers, our traffic car, a training officer, a couple of our drug officers, and we have lost a lot over the last 5 years. So patrol that's where it's at. Where the patrol officers are the ones responding to the 911 calls, going to the calls, making the traffic stops, getting out with people, going to the gun calls. So they are very busy. With that said, though, customer service is near and dear to my heart. If you call 911, I would expect that an officer's going to show up. It might not be within a half hour. It might not be within an hour. It might be 2-3 hours, depending on what it's for. But when the officer does show up, I would expect that they would provide you a level of service that they would obviously expect. So, with that said, if an officer comes out, and officers deal with a lot in the day, in the week, in the month. An officer comes out and you don't feel you're getting the service that you should have, call me. You have my phone number, my email. I will get back with you. It may not be tomorrow, it may not be the next day, it may be the following week. Susan, I finally got back with her today and left her a voicemail. I will return a call, I will return an email, I can guarantee you that. If it's not me, it may be somebody below me that I'll pass it on to make sure they get in touch with you. But if you don't hear from someone, because I do forget on occasion, if you don't hear from someone, call back again until you get somebody there. So you call 911. I know if I call 911, I want an officer there and I want him to do a good job. So if you don't get that, call. Don't be too mean when you call them. All right, second thing, Crime Stoppers. I just wanted to throw it out. There's been a lot of talk about emails, calling the department, emailing us. We realize some people are hesitant to give their name. We now are involved with Crime Stoppers in Jackson. That's beneficial for what? 3 months, 4 months, 5 months? I mean, it hasn't been very long, but Crime Stoppers are still kind of working out some kinks in the toll-free number, but 517-483-STOP is the number. There's a whole process set up. When you call, you get a number assigned to your name. We actually don't, as law enforcement, we don't even get the information of who actually called in the tip. We get a number, that tip pans out, we report back to them. Tip number 1234 we got this information. It did prove to be a valid tip. And then there's money available that Crime Stoppers divvies out to successful tips. So that's one option that's out there to report stuff to us. So if you have info on a crime, on a person that you know we're looking for, call it. It may not pan into anything, but it could be a piece of information we've been waiting on. So don't hesitate to call that. And there might be a kickback to you. Third thing, break-ins. I just wanted to mention break-ins. we've had some break-ins, the county's had some break-ins, they recently caught a couple people that we suspect have been involved in some of them. But what I really wanted to touch on, as far as break-ins goes, is, again, keeping an eye out in your neighborhoods. Keeping your doors locked, keeping your windows locked, keeping your cars locked. It's amazing how many of these break-ins are simply an unlocked window or an unlocked door, and they're looking for easy opportunities. A lot of these break-ins, they're not necessarily a professional burglar or someone that's real violent. A lot of them are young teens, late teens, who are just looking for a quick opportunity to steal some appliances, trade them in, pawn them, or turn them into someone they know that's taking and stolen goods and getting $20-25. So keep an eye out. You see suspicious people in your neighborhoods, call 911. Officer doesn't show up, call 911 again. If you call 911 and an officer doesn't make contact with you, you want to speak with an officer, call 911 again. Say, I would like to actually talk to an officer.